Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights. Here are your hosts, Hector, Kolonas, and LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another recap episode here on the This Week in Coworking podcast. Once again, I'm joined by LaRosa. I am Hector Kolonas, and today we had a fantastic episode. We're going to dig into some of the biggest news stories this week, starting with the two mega mergers that happened earlier and came out of, as well as looking at the new peer support networks that's kind of been founded to support the next generation of co-working leaders, and just kind of looking at what we can expect from Undercurrents, our kind of deep dive series over the next couple of months. Mike, let's get started. Before we do, how are you this week?
Well, I'm recovering from all the big news. I was going to crack a New Year's joke and say these aren't just the two biggest news stories of the week. They're the two biggest news stories of the year, and we're only on week 3. I don't know. I think maybe we deserve a little bit of flowers. What did we say at the end of last year? What did we say? Oh, we're not going to really do predictions, but we see tech really being big through some maybe being mergers and acquisitions and basically real estate understanding, like tech is more than just all these different pieces. Anyway, we'll get off our soapbox. We won't, but it's kind of crazy it happened that fast, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we could see between the lines of the news that we're already sharing, right? We saw kind of leadership shifts at some of the firms. We saw kind of technology updates being made. So you could kind of look between the lines. And I think that's one of the great things about, especially kind of our power readers, if that's the term, or power listeners, kind of being able to spot those trends in between. I'm not saying that we're some sort of mathematical geniuses, but we can see, I'm pretty sure that some of our other readers have been able to pick up on those trends as well. And it's probably why we have, some of the, almost all the decision makers at all the big firms actively subscribing. I mean, the email drops at 6 a.m. Eastern time. It bounces across organizations, and it's fantastic to see that, because I know of 4 or 5 companies that have stand-ups on Friday mornings to talk about what was in the newsletter and how it affects their strategies. And so it's just fantastic to kind of be right sometimes, where we kind of make calls that it's going to be a big year this year. And right out the gate, it is week 3. It's our second newsletter of the year, and we're already announcing some pretty big market moves. Let's get started with kind of 2 that overlap, but we'll start with the one on the real estate side. We saw CBRE acquire the rest of Industrious. So folks who maybe are listening for the first time or are new to the co-working world, back in, I want to say 2020.
Yeah, it was during COVID.
Yes, 2020, CBRE bought 40% of Industrious for a kind of a bit of equity check, as well as some kind of line of credit, essentially, or a convertible note. Come 2025, they acquired the rest of it, valuing the whole Industrious company at $800 million, but also creating a new business unit within CBRE called which is the Building Operations and Experience Unit. And that will be led now by James Yardi, the ex-CEO of Industrious. And it's just a really interesting concept, because one of the largest commercial real estate firms now has a team dedicated to workspace experience, to hospitality, to building, to servicing, to amenities. So it's definitely a huge shift. And for anyone who's not taking notes, this is the time to take note and see what else is happening. But Mike, you're closer to the commercial side of the world than I am. What is your take on Steel? I know that you have some thoughts.
At last, finally, I think as someone who's had these types of conversations to try to educate and support and encourage real estate leaders to see where those tides are going, or those winds are changing towards, I think commercial real estate, it's no secret, is a case study industry. And so what someone sees someone do, they'll be more likely to do it. I mean, there's a reason why there's like a Starbucks and a Quiznos and a dry cleaners like in every strip mall, right? It's an equation that oftentimes works. And so to your point, so a couple of things. So original cash in was valued at about $250 million in that initial 2-round process, during COVID. I think that was a really smart move. CBRE has started and stopped a variety of different types of initiatives. And I think that they've taken lessons from that And I think that it was just kind of like, successful people always say that like success is like majority preparation and then the rest luck or what, and I think that this is the right person in the right place at the right time. And, I've had some great interactions with Industrious, as a vendor partner. They bought into a percentage of Deskpass last year when I was working at Deskpass. So that was a great experience to see what they were doing. Industrious is more than just the brand. They've got some really impressive technology. I was really impressed with the way that they built, like if you weren't managing an enterprise deal and you were just Joe Schmo off of the street walking in for an office, or better yet, you were Joe Schmo searching online for an office, their front end user experience was excellent. And it walked you through every different step of the process. You could pick which office you wanted. You could see what the price difference was. You could see photos of it. Then it puts you directly into the contracting process. So I think it's more than just what might be surface level. I think that Industrious has really good processes, and I think they have really good hospitality standards. And it just made so much more sense to why try to reinvent it again, right? Just take what's working. But I think the biggest piece of this is the new role for Jamie. This is 95,000 people and 7 billion square feet of space that will be under this purview. I don't know of anything else that exists like this in the industry with that much size and scope. I don't think it will be easy, but nothing worth doing was ever easy. And I think that this needed to be big to give him a global mandate of sorts in order to push this change through what is a very large organization.
Absolutely. I think you bring up a really good point where a lot of people see Industrious and they're like, oh, that's like the baby WeWork, right? Or that's the one that couldn't be WeWork at the game.
Or the grown-up WeWork, right? The non-neon light WeWork, right?
Or the more structured and thoughtful, like scalability wise. But if you look at kind of the
Waffle Wednesdays, that's what I think of. Not to interrupt.
So one thing I love to do is going into the newsletter and clicking on the brands that, we mentioned. And if you do go to Industrious's, co-working profile page, you can actually start seeing a lot more below the surface. A lot of the times, Anna Squires Marine has come on stage and shared in podcasts and other places just how much they use data to be predictive, to create the hospitality experience, to create moments of delight. All of that comes into the equation and makes them so much more than just a pure play, we manage property. So this deal absolutely makes sense. CBRE and all the other firms trying to find their way into technology, their way into services, their way into kind of being part of the flex conversation. We're seeing, JLL make moves with their Spark investment funds. We're seeing some of the other firms, Cushing and others, making their own plays. So this is just a very good first mover advantage. They had the base and they tried and failed, I believe, with Hannah a couple of years ago. So they know kind of what works and they could kind of see what they needed from this. And it's just a great result for the founding team over at Industrious as well.
I think it's the quintessential tortoise versus the hare story, right? Like I can't but think back to both in written form and very well dramatized in a miniseries for TV that, these two were major competitors. We work in Industrious, right? And if you take a look, Industrious was slower, thoughtful, more methodical, found a better business model that was more sustainable. And so it's just really interesting. Both firms are great. And I think both have a really big future in the industry, but it's just really interesting to see from a founder standpoint, not from a brand standpoint, right? Like really, it's really fascinating and really impressive.
Absolutely. And both from that dramatized version and from everything I've heard, have since moving to New York, one of the two brands was much more collaborative starting out. And that maybe kind of a symbolism of kind of how they were able to innovate, get great people, but also, they were one of the very first to do very, very asset-light expansion, right? Yeah. And it's now become like a thing. Last year, almost every brand was looking at agreements. Everyone was doing management agreement. Industrious has done residential. They've done industrial. They've done suburban. Like they were able to innovate and try things in different markets, and now they've got the playbooks. So I think we're going to turn around to or the first deal was done in 2020. So we can turn around in 5 years and be like, Industrious was undervalued, right? I
For
believe that
sure.
that's played
I
through.
think they got a steal of a deal, to be fair. I really did. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's the same when Instagram got bought for, what was it, $1 billion, and all that. Why are you buying an 18-month-old
yeah.
app for $1 billion? Like, I think this is going to be the same element. It's not exactly 18 months old, but I think it's at the right time, the right place, the right people. I'm very, very excited to see what comes from this.
Yeah.
But Mike, you did bring up another interesting kind of segue into our next big merger and acquisition story. A while ago, Industrious did buy a piece of Deskpass. This week, we saw Yardi acquire all of Deskpass and the UK equivalent of the UK brokerage and booking platform, Hubble. For folks that don't know, we've spoken about Deskpass a bunch of times. We're not really talking a lot about Hubble on the podcast. I know that the CEO was excited to join us, but he's got some fantastic life stuff happening right now. So we wish him all the good luck with that. But we just kind of a background about Hubble. They started around 2013, 2014, I believe, went through an accelerator called Entrepreneur First, came up with the idea to create an online booking platform for co-working spaces in kind of the early days, started then shifting into offices. Their latest play was kind of team services just before COVID. After COVID, they launched this fractional office piece. They're one of the core contributors to our initial pilot on Undercurrents, where we get deeply into where is fractional office working? And they were the ones showing us that some of their landlord or operating partners were getting 30% premiums on their office space when splitting it between two or more companies. So really interesting technology there. I'm excited to see what is going to come kind of merge into Yardi. But before I dig into my kind of assumptions and questions, Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think Hubble and Deskpass are two very well-known and respected entities in the marketplace. Both had interactions and opportunities with a variety of different real estate firms. I believe JLL Spark did move forward with that investment in Hubble. So I think, yeah, it's exciting to see. We thought that this roll-up was going to happen. It is happening, and it's exciting to kind of be able to say, hey, I remember that person when it was just an idea. I remember that person when they only had one city, right? And so I think Hubble, I was always impressed, albeit not well interacted with them, but I was always impressed with their ability to pivot and to identify what other pain points, something that I learned through selling occupiers on Flex is because there is a spectrum, there's all different types of spaces. You're kind of like constantly uncovering, it's like looking for truffles, right? You're kind of uncovering these different use cases, right? Like, I want fractional, I want on demand, I want this, I want that. Upflex spent a lot of time on hub and spoke trying to figure out that model, right? Like, these companies have tried to figure out how to digitize that process or how to make it more seamless or less frustrating, right? I think Hubble and Deskpass are also reflect the success that, obviously selling your company as a startup that is deemed a success, I think comes from their real life interaction, that they both experienced these pain points and wanted something better. Like, I'll never forget, like, sitting in Chicago in 2016 and Sam is literally telling me, like, I want to be able to book desks like I book an Uber. And I was like, yeah, who doesn't want to book a desk like they book an Uber? But then you book it and then it's confirmed. And then you solve the confirmation piece and then it's confirmed, but how do you get into the building? Well, how do you work through the access control piece, right? And then you get to the front desk, but the person doesn't know what it is. So then so it's just been so exciting to see these companies. And I'm so blessed and grateful to have had kind of a front row seat to part of the action at Deskpass. And I couldn't be more proud of all of them for, positioning it. I think Yardi is on the right path to seeing how their tech stack needed to be maybe strengthened in a couple different areas. And I feel like I have it over here. You can't see it, but it's like Thanos' Infinity Gauntlet. Mr. Yardi is most definitely getting all of his stones. And it will be very interesting 2025 to see that now the challenge is execution. And so we've seen this time and again, mergers and acquisitions happen every day. and then some work out, some don't. I have no doubt that these will be fruitful, but commercial real estate industry is not easy. And so
Yeah,
it will be a process. Let's put it that way.
absolutely. I think you bring up a very good point. We've seen roll-ups before, right? We've seen firms like Instant Associates acquire all of IWG's digital assets. We saw them acquire different assets. How well those are all integrated, we're still waiting for the rollout of the new brand, right? So there's a lot happening there, and that's a pretty well-funded machine. I don't think it's as well-funded as Yardi, but it's a pretty well-funded machine as well.
Not a lot of businesses are well funded as Yardi. I think Yardi has been really off the radar, like privately held, billions and billions of dollars of revenue or payments processed monthly. So that's like just 3% of that is massive. I think 9,000, 10,000 employees as of right now, before those acquisitions. So he's got a really good long runway ahead. Let's just put it that way. I think it's a never ending runway because they can just keep it going.
Absolutely. And I think I'm very excited to see the acquired podcast on the Yardi Systems Company. I don't know if you know about that podcast. If you run out listening to episodes to listen to on this podcast, go over and listen to that. They do read like 3-hour deep dives into companies that are mostly privately held and you can't really figure out how they work. If they want an IKEA, blew my mind. So I think Yardi's one will be as interesting, to be honest. And he's just an awesome guy to chat to. So apart from the ton of congratulatory side, there's some questions that are playing in the back of my head, right? Going back to like one of our first podcast episodes that we used to relaunch the series, we spoke to Anand, we spoke to some of spoke to Jason over at Fast, and we saw a glimpse into the future that Mr. Yardi, Anand, sees, right? And it is about this global network of accessible space through different touch points. I think this is kind of that next step into this kind of mission. But it brings up the question, because now he has 3 competing platforms with 3 different pricing models for operators. So as soon as we can, we're going to pull on someone from Yardi here, and we're going to ask these questions. What does this mean for operators? Are we going to see, Coworking Cafe, which is their kind of homegrown solution, start charging commissions? Or are we going to see it go the flip side, where the platforms they've acquired drop their commissions and start making themselves as a kind of undeniable listing channel for folks that may be or may not be better integrated with the technology that they sell as their core product? So it's going to be a really interesting couple of months to see how it all kind of fits together, how those rings go on the glove, as you said. But I am very excited to dig in deeper and kind of figure out a little bit more what this all means for the companies, the operators, teams that were involved, and the industry as a whole. We did see some pretty cool other news. And one of the ones I really want to talk about is this new organization called FLOC, or what is the abbreviation for?
Future Leaders of Coworking.
I
was like, because we needed another acronym in the industry, right? I was like, okay, I saw that news and I know nothing about this. So just like many of you might have, I learned this through This Week in Coworking, and I had on my list to be like, okay, Hector, let's talk about it. And I was like, let's not actually talk about it like we usually talk about stuff before recording. I want to talk about it with you while we're recording. So another industry organization, Hector, tell me on the premise, tell me on the benefit, and why we need another acronym.
Good. So I think it's a very worthwhile acronym, and to better answer a lot of the questions, we are going to have Sam Shea, who's one of the spearhead driver of this whole organization, on the podcast, talking about something slightly different, but on relation to kind of why FLOC was created. But when Sam reached out initially, she was like, we've got this idea. There's a few of us. It's her, Blaze Randell, Luke Willis, and Deshaun Brown. They wanted to create a peer support network where folks are kind of like in the middle of the career in co-working. So not kind of the first starters, their first job. Folks who have been in the co-working industry for more than 2 years, but maybe aren't holding executive roles or aren't kind of tenured and been doing this for 10 years. They want to create a way to support each other, create kind of cross-pollination of ideas, cross-pollination of of opportunities, and just create a real career trajectory for people within co-working. Because a lot of folks kind of get in and they think like this is a one track thing. I joined Industrious, I joined WeWork, and I have a career until I hit the glass ceiling there. And then almost always they move out of the industry, into commercial real estate. So what would it look like if there was a network to kind of move people within the industry, skilling up everybody, but also skilling up the companies who can now hire more experienced talent as opposed to always starting on entry level. Really interesting. They got a bunch of ideas. I am officially an advisor at FLOC, so very, very excited.
Well, you didn't have enough to do, Hector?
Oh no, I did not. But I do think a lot about sustainability and what comes next. As folks at the newsletter know, it's gone very much from 2019, 2016. This is Hector's newsletter. So this is This Week in Co-working. And if you look at the homepage now and you don't listen to the podcast, you don't even see a mention of Hector. So I'm always thinking about how do we get the next generation to kind of do better and be more collaborative. And so when this idea presented myself, I was like, I'm not very time rich right now, but I will help as much as I can. And I'm very excited about the team that they pulled together, the other advisors they have on board. And hopefully it lands up, it's taking its inaugural class now. So if you are kind of been in the industry for over 2 years, but under kind of the 10, do an application or reach out to us. I'm happy to introduce you to Sam and the team.
Yeah, so I guess that, let's share a little bit more about it. I'm all about professional camaraderie and networking as well as professional and personal development. So this is all good. The application process, like what are you then committing to? Is it kind of like other types of leadership programs? Like I know like there's sometimes regional where you apply, you're considered, and then you have like a dedicated amount of participation. Like are these like going to be meetups, Zooms? Like what can they expect from it?
Well, given they're kind of costing a wide now, I'm assuming there will be a digital element to it, but they are partnering up with, Juicy, GWA, etc., to create kind of in-person experiences as well. So it's going to be a really interesting kind of online, offline thing. I'm not really sure about the full commitments. For some reason, I wasn't considered as a future leader. So I'm too old. I think I've aged out. So I don't know.
It's those grays. I keep on telling you, Hector, it's those grays.
The next podcast episode, I'm suddenly going to have no beard, no muzzle, and just black hair. And people are going to be like, what happened? I'd be like, no, it's just how I always look, just so I can get into FLOC. But so I don't know exactly about what it's all going to look like. I know they're all piecing it together right now. They're kind of going ahead. They're kind of doing their organization meetings every couple of weeks. I'm not party to all of them just because we kind of have a lot of work to do here at Twig and my slightly hectic day job over at Sinkaroo, but I'm sure Sam will share a lot more about and what that all looks like. And I'll make sure to ask her what are the commitments in the episode that she'll be joining us on.
Cool.
Awesome. Great. I think that's pretty much the biggest stories this week. I don't want to overload folks with kind of the news. We had 100 and something links that we had to go through at 6 a.m. yesterday morning. So the fact that we managed to get it down to 30-ish that we sent out. So definitely go open that newsletter, hop into your email inbox and read through that. There's some really good nuggets in there. There's some resources, tips. There's some copy and paste guides on how to create automations. So definitely look at that. One thing I did want to flag before we hop out, we've announced the next 3 undercurrents. And these are the deep dive kind of studies that we do into emerging trends. The first one is, the first 3 are going to be e-commerce and how it impacts the bottom line, AI agents and what happens when it's all AI agents all the way down, and the future revenue stack. The first one is sponsored now by Office R&D, the next one by Unity, and the third one by Sinkaroo. So that's what we're working on. If you're interested, head over to thisweekincoworking.com/undercurrents, and you'll also be able to see the next 6 that we're recommending. And if you're interested in kind of taking part in underwriting any of those topics, please reach out. We're always looking to kind of create more action-packed resources that allow you to drive your businesses forward.
Well, hopefully we can catch our breath and get a little bit of respite from news. I think that there will be some other big things coming in a few months, but maybe we get a little break. So take it easy, Hector. And I don't think you will be seeing me next week, but I know you've got someone great lined up to co-host with you. And I will see everyone back at the end of the month, or will we be in January already? Who knows? But I'll see you guys real soon.
Yes, so you'll be out next week. We're going to wish you a fantastic week. I'm very, very envious that you will be offline doing something awesome, and I will be here geeking out, but do what you love and you never work a day in your life, right? So have a fantastic week next week, Mike. All the best wishes, and I'm excited to have you back the week following.
Ciao.